hotels in Australia.
Tonight, returning serve. More tennis players forced into hard quarantine, and they're getting little sympathy from authorities.
People are free to provide lists of demands, but the answer is no.
Also tonight, more Victorians heading home as the government eases travel restrictions for parts of Sydney and border communities. Tourists in Bali told to drop for 20 as police crack down on foreigners flouting mask rules. And a series on the line. Australia sets up a tantalising run chase for India heading into the final day at the Gabba. Good evening, Paul Higgins with ABC News. The Victorian government has hit back at tennis players complaining about their strict quarantine conditions, saying they were well aware of the rules before they boarded the flights. More than 70 players and dozens of officials are now confined to their hotel rooms after another case of coronavirus was detected from one of the charter flights. World number one Novak Djokovic has reportedly asked tournament organisers to allow players greater freedom, but Victoria's Premier says that won't be happening. Tom Maddox reports.
Innovation in isolation. On day 4 of hotel lockdown, players unpacked much-needed deliveries and pushed their confines to the limit. After describing the conditions as insane, French player Elise Cornet sent Twitter into meltdown, prompting her to apologise. She said, "Your reaction to this tactless comment made me realise what you've been through last year and how much you suffered." The backlash didn't end there. World number one Novak Djokovic reportedly issued a letter to Tennis Australia demanding fitness and training equipment in all hotel rooms, better food, a reduced number of days in hard isolation, permission to visit your coach, and to move players to private homes with a tennis court for practice.
People are free to provide lists of demands, but the answer is no.
Daniel Andrews says no one will get special treatment.
People were told what the rules were. The rules will not be changing because the public health advice is where those rules came from.
It's not ideal, obviously. We all not going to be as fit after the 14 days when we come out of it.
The number of players in hard hotel quarantine has grown to 72 after another positive case was revealed overnight. Some have complained about the conditions, but they're getting little sympathy.
Harden up. I mean, as I understand it, the get through the first round, there's $100,000 on offer to any player that does that. That's not a bad payday in anyone's mind.
Players who tested negative were ready to hit the courts, but were told to stay in their rooms. So far, one player has tested positive, but test results for the entire playing cohort have been delayed. It means COVID-negative players are set to enter another day of strict lockdown. And while most appear happy to follow the rules, preparation for next month's Grand Slam is becoming more difficult. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Melbourne.
Victoria has reopened its border to most of Sydney tonight, allowing more stranded Victorians who've been stuck interstate since the beginning of the year to return. As many began planning their journey home, Melbourne CBD welcomed back thousands of office workers. Here's state political reporter Bridget Rollison.
It was a slow start for many businesses hanging out for a morning rush.
We really need them to come back, and I haven't seen anyone yet.
A few people around, not much. I hope like around the lunchtime it will be busy.
It's been 8 months since Victorians were directed to work from home, but private businesses are now allowed to welcome back half of their workforce.
It's the foot traffic that we rely on, and that's what I noticed, that foot traffic is increasing now.
Workers are no longer required to wear masks at their desks, but Victorians must wear them in high-risk areas, including public transport.
For our city to be vibrant and viable, we need city workers to return to their workplaces.
As the state recorded a 12th day in a row of 0 new cases, Victoria reopened its borders to most of Sydney. 25 local government areas, as well as the Blue Mountains and Wollongong, have been downgraded from red zones to orange, meaning stranded Victorians can now apply for a permit to return home. There's some good news for border communities too. 16 local government areas, including Albury and Wagga Wagga, are now considered green zones, and border residents don't need a permit to travel back and forth, only their ID.
Fingers crossed for the remaining suburbs in Sydney, and as the Premier says, they'll be reviewed every single day.
And while that happens, the war of words continues.
To impact thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by going overboard, I don't think is the way to do it.
I'm not going to get the permission of other political leaders in other states to keep Victoria safe.
Victorian Police was under scrutiny after reports it would be dropping tens of thousands of fines handed out for COVID-19 breaches last year. This afternoon, it denied that and said the confusion was due to a poorly worded guidance note issued to members.
We'll prosecute all of those that should be prosecuted.
Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
The Secretary of the Department of Health, Brendan Murphy, says he's not unduly concerned about a small number of deaths in Norwegian nursing homes that have been linked to Pfizer vaccine shots. Those who died were frail, and it's not clear if the vaccines caused their deaths. But regulators are seeking more information. The host of ABC's Coronacast, Dr. Norman Swan, takes a look at how concerned we should be.
Never before have new vaccines been developed, tested and rolled out to millions in less than a year. So when there's news of a potential problem, like the deaths of frail elderly people in Norway, how do we make sense of it? Clinical trials lasting a few months have been conducted in around 40,000 people for each vaccine. But they only tell you about side effects in those selected for the trial. Rare side effects in the real world usually emerge after a vaccine has been released. That's when it became clear there's a small risk of serious allergy with the Pfizer vaccine. Now there's the death of a US doctor due to hemorrhage from low blood platelets, and these deaths in frail elderly Norwegians. And let me tell you, there'll be more scares as vaccines are rolled out. Regulators have to separate coincidence from true vaccine effects, and then decide what to do. They do that by looking for similar reports from the millions of people already immunised and whether there are emerging patterns. Regulators are already onto the potential for a severe allergy or anaphylaxis from the Pfizer vaccine. And if there is a real risk to frail elderly, then they might be excluded from some vaccines. So far, the problem in the frail elderly doesn't seem to be widespread, so it may be that other countries aren't vaccinating terminally ill people. The story of the doctor's death is troubling, but his condition is so rare that it should be readily noticed and reported if it's happening elsewhere. So far, so good, but this is just the kind of side effect that does worry authorities, because unlike allergy and the frail elderly, they may be impossible to avoid. For you and me, watching from the sidelines, it's important to sit back a bit. Almost all these reports will end up being coincidence. And with huge amounts of data available in real time, serious problems should be able to be sorted out at high speed.
Well, first, Qantas suggested it would only let passengers fly overseas if they were vaccinated. Now, the New South Wales Premier says it would be a good idea if pubs and restaurants took a similar approach with their customers. But denying people entry to venues based on their vaccine status could be a legal minefield.
COVID has created challenges for so many businesses. Now a vaccine is imminent, there's more to consider. Should people who don't get vaccinated be allowed into venues?
In terms of safety, it is important because there's a lot of other people that do come into the cafe and we don't want to spread anything anymore.
But for this cafe in Parramatta, it will pose a problem as well.
A lot of people are choosing not to get vaccinated, but they still want to come into the shop, which might be an issue.
The issue is legal and ethical.
I think that's quite reasonable in a sense that in a broader sense where everyone can stay safe.
It's just too much, yeah, it's too far, yeah.
The Premier is still considering her policy approach and is looking at ways to persuade people to get the vaccine. She supports the concept of businesses banning people who refuse to get it.
We'd like there to be an incentive system where people are encouraged to have it.
Proof of being vaccinated could be shown on the Service New South Wales app.
People make up their own rules if they run a business or have a workplace about what they feel is COVID safe.
It would seem to be extremely unlikely that that could be done without, or should be done, without a considerable amount of legal work in the background.
It could be done through legislation or regulation, but there's no indication the state government will go down that path. What the Premier seems to be doing is trying to start a conversation ahead of a vaccine rollout and gauge community reaction.
I think it's important for the community to start thinking about the vaccine and how they feel about it.
There were no new locally acquired cases recorded in New South Wales, while the number of people who were tested dropped to less than 9,000. That's the lowest number in a month. And as police investigate yet another apparent breach of the rules, the government is nervous about further easing restrictions. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
Victoria will double its capacity to recycle glass under a multi-million-dollar plan unveiled by the state and federal governments. The scheme is part of a nationwide strategy to overhaul recycling infrastructure after a ban on waste exports. The $46 million scheme is expected to create 350 jobs across the state and convert tens of thousands of tonnes of plastic and glass into materials for roads, building and packaging products.
That's a significant uplift that will actually close the gap for our glass recycling, which is a wonderful story. Turning all of that into really higher value products and getting all of those jobs created.
$8.1 million will be spent across 7 different projects in metro and regional areas before the second round of funding opens in March. Still to come this hour, could we be on the cusp of another housing boom?
So, congratulations. Historically, a 1% fall in the cash rate will boost house prices by about 10%. We're seeing very strong growth in lending among first home buyers. As those buyers return to the market, that's really where we see that upward price pressure over the next year.
Plus, the growing push to radically overhaul hotel quarantine. That's coming up.
Authorities in Bali are taking an interesting approach to foreigners who refuse to wear masks in public. They're forcing people to do push-ups, with vision of the unusual punishment going viral on social media. Indonesia correspondent Anne Barker has more.
You have mask? If I get off. Okay, come.
This is how Bali is cracking down on people who refuse to wear masks in public.
25.
Along with a small fine, they're being ordered to get down and push up 25 times as punishment. No excuses accepted.
I have a issue every morning. I can't do exercise. You must be... All right, so do you have any? Yeah, 25. 25, easy.
Authorities say the Balinese are also guilty of not following the rules, but often foreigners, including Australians, refuse to pay up, so they're told to push up instead.
Get up, get up, get up, get up, get up. I give you yeah.
Despite skyrocketing infections across Indonesia, including Bali, many still flout the rules on masks and social distancing that have been mandatory for months. Bali's governor is now warning foreigners without masks that they'll be banned from tourist sites and restaurants.
There will be a crackdown because there are still many tourists not wearing masks.
Some tourists support calls to deport those who ignore health protocols.
I think if they don't follow the rules, then maybe send them home. I don't know. I think push-ups, what does that do?
Almost 600 people have died in Bali from coronavirus and almost 21,000 have been infected, a 17% increase this month alone. Despite the surge, some foreigners don't see the need for the stricter stance.
I'm in the open air. The closest person to me is you. My friends are 2 metres away, and if you like to film the surroundings, there's no one within 20 metres of me.
Then again, some in Bali take it to the other extreme. Even their four-legged friends are masked up. Anne Barker, ABC News.
The US, France and Germany are among the countries that have condemned the arrest of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The critic of Vladimir Putin was detained as he returned to Moscow for the first time since he was poisoned with a nerve agent. Europe correspondent Nick Dole has more.
Alexei Navalny looked healthy as he boarded a plane in Berlin, determined to return to Russia. It's been 5 months since he was poisoned in Siberia with the nerve agent Novichok and airlifted to Germany for treatment.
As a citizen of Russia, I have the absolute right to return home.
Before taking off, the defiant Kremlin critic posted a video of his wife Yulia quoting a Russian TV drama to his millions of supporters on social media.
Bring us some vodka, boy, we're flying home.
Russian prison services vowed to arrest him on arrival, saying that being outside the country violated the terms of a 2014 suspended sentence for embezzlement.
Those in power are not just disgusting thieves. They are also totally pathetic people who are spending their time on complete nonsense.
At passport control in Moscow, he was confronted by police and threatened with physical force if he disobeyed detention orders. His lawyer wasn't allowed to accompany him. Earlier, riot police cleared the arrivals hall of his supporters and detained more than 50 people. Then Alexei Navalny's plane was suddenly diverted to a different airport in the city. Last month, President Putin dismissed accusations he was behind the near-deadly poison attack on Mr. Navalny.
Who needs him? If someone had wanted to poison him, they'd have finished him off.
The couples refused to be driven into exile in a foreign country, saying the charges against him are politically motivated. With this direct challenge to President Putin, there are fears Mr. Navalny could now spend years in jail. Nick Dole, ABC News, London.
Former FBI Director James Comey says a federal criminal prosecution against Donald Trump after he leaves office could be bad for the country. State capitals are on high alert across the US, with pro-Trump demonstrations planned ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on Thursday, our time. Donald Trump could face a Senate trial as soon as this week after being impeached for a second time for inciting an insurrection against the US Capitol earlier this month. It could prevent Mr. Trump from running for national office again. And James Comey says that's as far as federal authorities should go in holding him to account.
The country needs to find a way to heal itself, and that'll be much, much harder if the Donald Trump show is on our television screens every single day in the nation's capital, which is where it would have to be prosecuted, in United States versus Donald Trump.
Several governors have declared states of emergency and others closed their Capitol buildings to the public until after Joe Biden's inauguration. Archaeologists in Egypt have discovered a trove of ancient treasures which experts say could rewrite the history of the entire region. The antiquities include dozens of coffins and sarcophagi which date back 3,000 years to the New Kingdom period. They also unearthed a funerary temple belonging to a queen in a vast necropolis to the south of Cairo.
In 2010, we found a pyramid of a queen, but we never know the name of the queen. Only yesterday, we found a temple for the pyramid, and we found the name of the queen. Her name was Nit.
Another key discovery was a 4-metre-long papyrus, including texts of the Book of the Dead, written to direct the deceased through the underworld. The American producer who transformed pop music in the 1960s and was later convicted of murder, Phil Spector, has died at the age of 81. Spector produced 20 top 40 hits between 1961 and 1965, working with the Beatles, the Righteous Brothers and the Ronettes. His signature production technique, the wall of sound, involved duplicating instruments to produce a rich ensemble tone. His life was blighted by drug and alcohol addiction, and in 2009 he was convicted of murdering Hollywood actress Lana Clarkson and given a sentence of 19 years to life. Spector was diagnosed with COVID-19 4 weeks ago and was transferred to a hospital, but state prison officials say he died of natural causes. 28 years after his death, Sidney Nolan is continuing to surprise the art world. A series of portraits by the artist have been uncovered in his archives and are being unveiled to the public for the first time.
It's Sidney Nolan like you've never seen him before. 50 colourful spray-painted portraits created by the famed Australian artist in Wales in 1982.
He was in a remote farmhouse and he picked up a few cans of paint and spray paint and decided to experiment.
The paintings had been stored at the late artist's home in the UK, but have now made their way across the world, soon to be on display for the first time as part of the Mona Foma Arts Festival in Hobart.
In 1982, it probably was seen as something a bit radical, maybe too radical, to be displayed publicly. So 38 years later, I think we've caught up with Sid.
Nolan is best known for his series of works about the infamous bushranger Ned Kelly, but his new works show him in a more contemporary light.
Because the works are done in spray paint, you can imagine a lot in the work because they're not defined and we don't know who the portraits are.
It's not just the prospect of seeing previously unknown artworks by Sidney Nolan that has art fans around the world excited. It's also the prospect of being able to snap up one of the rare pieces.
Nolans have made over $5 million in the past. These works are just under 10,000.
My phone's actually vibrating in my pocket right now. And yeah, I've got hundreds and hundreds of emails.
And the buzz is likely to continue, with more exhibitions of never-before-seen Nolan works already in the pipeline. Kate Ainsworth, ABC News, Hobart.
To Finance Now, it's welcome back to Alan Kohler.
Well, there were solid falls by the miners and banks today for no particular reason, and the main bright spot was JB Hi-Fi, which forecast a huge 86% increase in first half profit, with the CEO, Richard Murray, saying they're basking in an Australian economy that is in remarkably good shape, thanks to all the stimulus, a lot of which is being spent on new tellies and computers, as well as being saved. Most commodities fell, which helps explain why resources stocks went down, although the iron ore and coal prices went up. The dollar slipped back below 77 US cents, and global markets were weaker, especially in Asia today, except for China, where December quarter GDP was unveiled, and the Chinese economy finished 2020 accelerating, with growth of 6.5% in the final quarter, making it 2.3% for the year, the only major economy actually to grow last year. And as you can see, it's had a proper V-shaped recovery, with economic growth back to what it was before the pandemic. And that's partly because they've hardly got any cases now, and also because global trade in goods has bounced back much faster than it did after the GFC. Trade in services, like tourism and education, is still well down, but services are what China buys. It sells goods. That chart came from the World Bank's latest Global Economic Prospects report, which was out the other day, with this as the centrepiece. The world economy is going to be trailing pre-COVID forecasts for years to come. And that's finance.
After all the drama on and off the field this summer, the Australia-India Test Series will go down to the final day. The fourth and final test is now in the hands of Australia's bowlers. India still has all of its wickets in hand, chasing 328 runs for victory.
In a series where the two sides have been inseparable after 4 days, the deciders still on a knife's edge. With Brisbane's weather threatening time at the crease, Australia's openers came out swinging.
Just amazing timing from Marcus Harris.
But the first wicket...
There's a glove on it, there's a big appeal and given. Beautifully bowled, Shardul Thakur.
Led to a flurry. David Warner made 48, his best score this summer.
Yes, and so does Paul Wilson.
Marnus Labuschagne made quick runs but only lasted 26 minutes. Matthew Wade lasted just 3 balls.
A strangle down the leg side and India fight back again, just what they needed.
But even with wickets falling from every angle, the injury-plagued tourists looked battered and bruised. Australia continued to put the foot down.
The dive in the end for Steve Smith. Good hustle there.
Steve Smith had a life.
Smith advancing, throws everything at it. Doesn't get enough.
To get to 50, but was out due to a brute from Mohammad Siraj. That was the signal for Cameron Green to go on the attack.
Oh, put away beautifully.
But the wickets continued to fall. First Green, then captain Tim Payne.
Has he got a top edge on that, Tim Payne? Richard Park thinks so.
Rain forced an early tea as captain and coach deliberated on when to declare.
There's a brains trust to the Australian team.
They'd send in Australia's bowlers who came and went.
Straight to Mayank Agarwal. That's out. That's the 9th wicket now, Nathan Lyon.
All out, the home side set India 328 runs for victory. The rain delayed play again in the final session, setting up for an enthralling final day at the Gabba. Brittany Klein, ABC News, Brisbane.
The Melbourne Stars are continuing their climb up the BBL table after defeating the Renegades by 6 wickets. The lean form of Renegades and Australian T20 captain Aaron Finch continued as the Renegades were bowled out for 150. Nick Larkin and Marcus Stoinis top scored for the Stars with 43 runs each.
Hitsoglou comes on and gets dispatched. Very first ball. Stoinis probably feel a little relieved after that one.
The Stars are now third on the table, while the Renegades are still last. A young boy living on a property at Yass, New South Wales, is impressing others with his talent for mustering sheep. Born with a disability that has him using a wheelchair for mobility, Lucas has embraced life on the land.
Life on the land can be tough, but 9-year-old Lucas can't get enough of it.
It gives him a purpose out on the farm, so he loves being able to chase the sheep and help draft them, and he's even learnt how to shear the sheep.
Keep pushing, Lucas! The Wallace family works as a team on their small farm, and with his love of mustering, Lucas, who was born with cerebral palsy, is front and centre.
Whatever we do on the farm, he's right there beside us, whether it be going down and feeding the chickens or collecting the fruit off the trees.
I'll hop on my bike, even necessary, like my motorbike, and I'll go the long way to the driveway, and Lucas will go the short way. First one there wins. Yeah. Me and him will go fetch the sheep. Like, he'll go one way, I'll stand at the gate making sure they'll go in.
He's been a huge inspiration for me. Like, on my low days, I just look at Lucas and, see the way his face lights up when he gets to go out and do something. And it's just like, all right, if he can do it, I can too.
When a video of Lucas mustering was shared online, it attracted some welcome attention.
When we posted the video online, there were a few other people that would message me privately and say that, that they had somebody that was in a wheelchair and they didn't realise that they had that capability. And so they're now actively trying to get their child out into the farm.
Working hard, having fun and inspiring others. Nikki Burnside, ABC News, Yass.
We are heading into some warm weather as the week goes on, and it'll be hot over the weekend. We had another cool summer morning though, 2 degrees at Mount Baw. Some early drizzle or light showers in the south, where it was a cloudy morning in western and central areas before sunny breaks in the afternoon. 17 at Wilson's Prom, 31 at Albury-Wodonga, Oyen, Rutherglen and Swan Hill. Melbourne City's high was 22.6 at 2:30 today. We had some early showers in our outer east, but no more than a millimetre of rain. Right now outside the back door, it is 18. Hobart's had wind gusts of nearly 100 kilometres per hour today. A hot one in Broome, 42. And on North Queensland's tropical coast, Innisfail notched up 160 millimetres rain in 30 hours as Cyclone Kimmy hovered offshore. It's taken a more southerly route than expected, and its track is erratic, so it may not make landfall at all and weaken out at sea, but it will still bring heavy rain up there. For us, mild southerly winds tomorrow. They'll become light on Wednesday. A weak cold front will move through Bass Strait this evening with a shower or two in our south tonight and early in the morning. Sydney will be windy tomorrow with a shower or two. Thunderstorms and showers in Brisbane could cause the cricket to be rained out. In Hobart, cloudy. Perth, Adelaide and Canberra will be mostly sunny. Back home, a shower or two tonight and early tomorrow in the south, especially over West Gippsland and the Yarra Ranges. It'll be a cloudy morning south of the Divide, as you just saw, then a mostly sunny afternoon. Highs still in the high teens to low 20s. Blue skies across the north and getting into the 30s near the Murray. A moderate to fresh southerly breeze. A southerly wind on the bay at 15 to 20 knots. Gales tonight on the Gippsland coasts. Strong winds on the bays and central coasts. We could have a shower or two later this evening, more likely in Melbourne's east. Cloudy tomorrow morning, then a mostly sunny afternoon. 14 overnight, 19 tomorrow, so 4 degrees cooler than today, and a moderate southerly wind. On Wednesday, blue skies and 25. Thursday, we break through 30, up to 32 and sunny. Mostly sunny on Friday, 27. And then to kick off the extra long weekend, Saturday, sunny and 30. Sunday, 38 degrees under mostly sunny skies. And on Monday, some late showers on a partly cloudy day with a high of 35. And that's all from the team here in Melbourne tonight. Now stay with us because Laura Tingle is next with 7:30.
Welcome to the program. I'm Laura Tingle.